and welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I am your host, Kenneth Gruenfelder, and as always, it's great to have you guys here on this fine Tuesday. We got a lot to talk about on today's show as we normally do, but before I get into that, I just want to remind you guys to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. Again, that really helps the show. It makes you part of the show. Your comment gets highlighted in the broadcast. I address it, and it's a great way to interact, with myself, the host, and get yourself out there. Once again, it's the following link right there: streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip, and it's also on the ticker on the bottom of the first segment. So, with that, let's get right into what we're going to talk about. So, we'll obviously go through last night's game between the Lions and the Raiders. We'll talk about that. Then we will get into talking about the Cowboys, which I titled this episode, "The Cowboys Hype is Back." So, I'll talk about that. I'll talk about the Cowboys, and how they did on Sunday against the Rams. So, we'll get into that in the second part of the show. In the third part of the show, we'll talk about the NFC South and where that currently stands after this week. And then to close out the show, we'll talk about what happened to the Chiefs on Sunday, because I know I kind of glossed over it because I was going through the shows really fast. So I do want to talk about that at the end of the show. So that's basically the rundown for the show for today. And with that, let's get right into the first part of the show, which is talking about the Lions and the Raiders game from last night. So, obviously, there were some implications with that regarding my spread pool. I still had a chance to win the week. I just needed the score to be 52 and over, and that did not hit. So I ended up losing the week. I had the same amount of wins. I finished with 12 wins, but I finished with the same amount of wins as two other people, and they had the tiebreaker that was closer to the final score. So I did not win the week. So I have to wait another week. And the funny thing is, I tied with the two people that are in first place in that spread pool, and I'm like middle of the pack this year. But hey, listen, my predictions were solid this week. I shouldn't have picked the Packers. That was a terrible pick. The Ravens, I don't even get me started with that game, even though I talked about it yesterday. But I don't want to talk about it anymore. And then, I lost the Thursday night game, which should have won that if it wasn't for the backdoor cover by the Bills or by the Bucks. And then there was one more the Chiefs game, which actually we'll get into at the end of the show. So let's get into actually talking about this game. The Lions, they did what they were supposed to do. They were supposed to win this game. The Raiders are not very good, but it was close at one point. Jared Goff did throw a pick six, and at that point it was 16-14. This is in the second half. But ultimately the Lions were able to pull away, and they won the game by a few scores here. So let's actually go through with how this game all progressed. So the Lions, on their first drive of the game, they went 14 plays, 54 yards in over 7 minutes to kick a field goal. So they went up 3-0. Raiders punted on their first possession. Then the Lions fumbled. Josh Reynolds caught a pass, and then he lost the ball. And then on the very next play, Garoppolo threw it up to Davante Adams, who they're trying to get more involved in the offense. Obviously, he's been frustrated over the last couple of weeks with, his lack of involvement in the offense. And that got picked off in the end zone, so it didn't even matter. Then the Lions punted. Raiders turnover on downs. Lions then kicked the field goal, so it was 6-0 after the first quarter. Then in the second quarter, Raiders punted. Lions, 7 plays, 63 yards, kicked another field goal. So their first 3 scoring drives were all field goals. Then the Raiders put together a solid drive. That was the Josh Jacobs drive. They literally just kept running it with Josh Jacobs towards the end of that drive, and he ended up punching it in for a 3-yard touchdown. So the score was 9-7 at that point. Then on the Lions' possession, following that, they went 9 plays, 79 yards, and they got a touchdown. That was to Sam Laporta, the rookie tight end, who's been great for the Lions this year. A great replacement for T.J. Hawkinson. And then the Raiders, took a knee to end the half. Well, actually, no, they ran it with Amir Abdullah, and then that was the end of the first half. Then, second half, Raiders punted. Lions, that was the pick six. that I mentioned before. Then on their next possession, they were driving, and they looked like they were going to score a touchdown, and then they fumbled. They had to review it. Max Crosby knocked the ball out. Well, took the ball away from Craig Reynolds. And, but the Raiders weren't able to capitalize on that. They punted. Lions, on their next drive, scored a touchdown. Jahmyr Gibbs from 27 yards out. He had a big game last night. Then the Raiders punted. Lions kicked a field goal. And then there was no scoring in the fourth quarter. Turnover on downs, both drives for the Raiders in the quarter. Lions missed a field goal. A 26-yarder, which was crazy that happened. And then that was it. And the Lions ended up winning 26-24. To look at the overall stats, Jimmy Garoppolo actually leads the league in interceptions. He has 9, despite playing in, I think it was just 6 games, which is not good. He was not good yesterday. 10-21, 126 yards, no touchdowns, and a pick. Josh Jacobs, he had that one really good drive, but the Raiders only ran the ball in total for 80 yards. He had 61 yards on the ground for a touchdown. And he was actually their leading receiver. He had 27 yards receiving. There was several players that had 19 yards receiving. Austin Hooper, Renfro, Michael Mayer, Jacoby Myers. Amir Abdullah had 1 reception for 12 yards. And Davante Adams had 1 for 11. The Raiders just could not get anything going offensively. And I just wanted to show Davante Adams' numbers from like the last 3 games. So we'll look into that right now. So just give me 1 second here. Yeah, I mean, you look at these numbers and you're just like, how is this possible? These are his last 3 games. So you got, against the Patriots, he had 2 receptions for 29 yards. Then he had 7 for 57. He did drop a touchdown in that game last week. And then this week, one reception for 11 yards. Now, the trade deadline is today. Obviously, if anything happens throughout the day, I don't expect anything to happen at this moment. But in the event that something does, I will obviously, break the news to you guys, even though you guys probably get like the notification for it. But, I just wanted to show that it's not likely that Davante Adams is going to get traded, but for me, I really hope he does, because I mean this offense is not good. It's just not good. They don't have the right quarterback, and I feel bad for Jimmy Garoppolo because I feel like he's one of those quarterbacks that I said it last night to my friends. He's one of those quarterbacks that just naturally gets hit in the wrong places a lot. I mean, last night there was a roughing the passer call. The Raiders were backed up in the end zone. And, there was a late hit on Garoppolo, a low hit, up against his knee. And obviously he was able to finish the game, but, he's dealing with a back injury, and he's had plenty of injuries. He had the foot injury last year. He just, and he's torn his ACL too. I mean, let's not forget back in 2018. So he's dealt with a ton of injuries. And I just feel like he gets hit in the wrong places every single time. I mean, against the Steelers, he basically got, crunched up in that game, and that's what injured his back. I just feel bad. I feel bad for the guy. It's unfortunate that keeps happening to him. But again, Davante Adams, he voiced his displeasure yesterday. He said he doesn't know he really has no answers. I mean, he said he didn't want to say anything that would get mixed up in the media. But yeah, it's been rough. I mean, this is a guy that went to the Raiders to play with his college teammate, and Derek Carr is no longer there, and it's a mess at the quarterback position right now. So I mean, if I was him, I would try to get out of there and go to a contender. But we'll see. But it doesn't look like the Raiders are going to move off of him. All right, so then we move on to the Lions stats. Jared Goff, 26-37, 272, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. I mean, the pick was bad, the pick 6. Marcus Peters was the one that picked it off and took it back. They ran the ball for over 200 yards, which, against the Raiders, who are, not very good against the run, that was expected, and that's exactly what happened. Jahmyr Gibbs had his coming out party, 26 carries, 152 yards, and a touchdown. And I went against him in one of my fantasy leagues, and I had Davante Adams, and I was down by 3 or 4 going into that matchup, going into the game last night. And I ended up losing by like 30 because Jahmyr Gibbs had a heck of a game. He also had five receptions for 37 yards. Their leading receiver was obviously AmonRaSt.Brown, 6 receptions, 108 yards. Sam Laporta had a good game, 8 receptions for 57 yards, targeted 10 times, and he had a touchdown as well. And the Lions get it done, and it looked bad at some points during the game, but this is a game that they were supposed to win. They got themselves back on the right track. If they would have lost this game, there definitely would have been, the alarms going off of them being frauds. It's because at some point, like after the pick six, you're like, what are they doing? And then they fumbled, but the Raiders just could not capitalize on anything. And the Lions defense, they did well last night. Albeit it was against a bad offense, but the Lions are the reason why this game, the pick six was why the Raiders were in this game. This game was closer than it should have been. I mean, the Lions were the better team. Raiders just could not do anything offensively last night. And Jimmy Garoppolo missed Davante Adams on that. I mean, it was literally a walk-in touchdown pretty much. Davante Adams put a good move on Cam Sutton, and Garoppolo just overthrew him. And that should have been a touchdown. So, things aren't looking good with the Raiders. I don't know what they're gonna do. I mean, if I was like anybody on offense, I would be like, get me out of here, because it's a mess right now. And I was watching TV right before I came on, and they were talking about Josh McDaniels, and I think he should be another one that should be gone. He's 20-33. That's his record as a head coach. So that really tells you all you need to know. I mean, he was a head coach of the Broncos back in the day. He should go back to. I mean, I think if they get rid of him, he should go back to. He's going to go back to the Patriots and be their offensive coordinator. Well, they got Bill O'Brien there now, but I think he's got to be a coordinator or something, because head coach is just not panning out for him. Ben Upson in the chat. Would you consider the Lions as real threats to the rest of the NFC? Yes, I absolutely do. The defense is getting better. It's been better. It's improved the last couple of seasons. Obviously, last week against the Ravens, definitely, was concerning there just because they got blown out. The Ravens scored touchdowns on their first 4 possessions. They couldn't move the ball offensively. So obviously, the Lions, I think, are a team that needs to, have home field advantage, because I can't really see them going on the road against like Philly or San Francisco if they figure it out eventually and win. But if you got the Lions at home, they got a better shot. And I mean, that goes for really all the teams the way things are right now. But I look at them as like the third best team in the NFC. I know the 49ers are struggling, and you got the Seahawks now are in first place, but I don't think that's going to last. And I don't want to discredit Seattle, because Seattle is a good team, and they also acquired Leonard Williams from the Giants yesterday. They traded away a second and a 5th round pick for Leonard Williams, so that helps their defensive line. They also brought back Frank Clark, who I thought was going back to the Chiefs, but I guess that didn't work out. So he goes back to his other old team, the Seahawks. So they continue to beef up that defensive line. The Seahawks are a good team. I just think what's going to hold them back is obviously Geno Smith, who, listen, he has been good since taking over the starting quarterback role with the Seahawks. Obviously, them letting go of Russell Wilson, trading Russell Wilson. But I think that's what's going to hold them back. But right now, I would say you got the Eagles, the 49ers, and the Lions. Those are the top 3 teams in the NFC. I'm still going to hold out hope that the 49ers figure it out. They're too talented. But there's some concern there. There definitely is. All right, so with that, we are going to take our first break of the show. And then when we come back, we're going to talk about another team in the NFC, and that's the Dallas Cowboys. I'm talking about their hype returning after their win against the Rams. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.